I never knew that I was codependent until after I'd healed it, which sounds really odd. What I knew I was an empath. This was the first term that I came across before hearing the term codependency. And I would hear in that journey that empaths are codependent. So it made sense. This video is going to highlight for you a few key points that I want you to become aware of as a way to accept yourself, okay? Because there's no shame in any of this. There's no shame. And as a highly sensitive person, you might be taking this a little personal. You might be feeling criticized. You might be feeling like a bad person and a damaged person, but there's nothing damaged about you. It's a learned behavior and it can be unlearned. And we change through awareness, right? Awareness is the first step of making any changes. Oh yeah, I feel other people's feelings like they are my own. I avoid conflict. I will do whatever I have to do to get people to feel better so that I can feel better. That's my responsibility. And I've probably been that way my whole life. As I've been reading through my childhood teenage diaries lately, if you haven't been able to check out those videos that I've done yet, those are going to be coming out a bunch over the next few months. So tune into that series. But just reading those from when I was 14 reveals how much of this codependent behavior I was already like actively practicing. Like it was part of my personality. Codependency becomes part of who you are. It's a pattern of behavior, and the way you behave and the way you keep showing up forms part of your persona until it becomes really detrimental and damaging, and you need to change. You recognize, you see where it's landed you, and where codependency will land you is in unsustainable, unhealthy relationships. And it'll land you in an unhealthy relationship with yourself because you've become disconnected from yourself, right? Like I always talk about codependency being like this. It's enmeshment. Like, here's me, I'm an individual, independent person. Here's this other independent person. And what I do is I come and I meet them and I go like this. And I want to just like, we are now one. I am you and you are me. I am nothing without you. I need you. This is codependency. It's an emotional addiction. And what will happen is after years of that, realizing how unhealthy that is, sometimes we may also be hyper independent. It's like, I'm just doing it all myself. I'm not allowing anyone in. I'm not asking for help. And if anyone offers me help, I reject it. And there's this very rigid boundaries start to be displayed, right? And this is what happens in codependency recovery, is you go from this to this. Like, I'm not letting anyone in. I'm just shutting it all down. And what we want to get to is something called interdependence. So once in a while, you know, I'll allow myself to coexist with another person, okay? I will have some coexisting moments, but I won't become fully engorged and enmeshed in this person. So a lot of times I was like this, then I was like this, and now I've learned how to be like this and coexist with people and give people their space. You know, being able to hold space for other people, being able to hold space for people's emotions without taking them on as your own, holding space for other people's experiences without feeling like you had to rush in there and fix them and take care of them and make them all better. The coexisting. So I want to go through in this video how we became codependent, how to know that you are codependent, and what you can do about it. So how did we get here? How did we become codependent? First of all, you are born into a family that was likely already codependent. Okay? You were raised by a parent who was enmeshed with the other parent or with their children. So you witnessed this behavior. You saw this behavior as normal, and you adopted this behavior as your own, also as normal. You were also born into a family that ignored problems. Problems, when they came to the surface, when they came to the table, may have been skimmed over. They may have been pushed to the side. They may have been brought up at first and said, we'll talk about that later, but then they never were. And you also probably had some family members who repressed their own emotions. They were not only ignoring the problems within the family, but they were ignoring their own selves. They weren't in tune with their feelings. They didn't express their feelings. And they were also not comfortable when you expressed yours. And then within that family system, you had parents who disregarded their own needs. They would be giving towards others to their own detriment. So you witnessed that, you were taught that to take care of your own needs was something that was selfish. Your own needs didn't matter. And you started to lose touch, not only with your own feelings, but also with your own needs. This family also may have lacked trust in the outside world, trust in you, trust in themselves. They may have been very overprotective because they didn't trust that you were, capable enough to make your own choices. And as a child, you may have also been made fun of or belittled. And finally, how to become codependent? Be raised by a parent with addiction. A lot of adult children of alcoholics are later in life showing traits of codependency. Because codependency is an addiction. It's an emotional addiction. And there is a cycle that's involved in this behavior, just like any other addiction. You engage in this behavior as a way to ignore yourself, as a way to invalidate yourself, and as a way to feel something by accessing something outside of you. I feel better when other people feel better, kind of thing. I'll be happy when you're happy. So this whole dependence on other people for our own self-worth. So like somebody who is struggling with an addiction, depending on that drug or drink to make themselves feel better. Without it, they can't deal. They can't cope. It's too overwhelming to be able to sit with their own emotional state, to be able to ask them about what their own needs actually are that they've been denying from themselves this whole time. So, okay, there's the groundwork. There's the foundation for how to become codependent. There's probably some other things in there, but those are the basics that I came up with. Now, how to know if you have actually become codependent? Here are a few signs. You have an exaggerated sense of responsibility for other people's behavior. An exaggerated sense, as in you take on the problems of other people like they're actually your own. And with that, other people's failures, other people's mistakes feel like your failures and your mistakes. You may even have come to pity the people that you love. You pity the people that you love. You feel so sorry for them. You think that they are very incapable of doing anything. If it wasn't for you here to help them, oh, who knows where they would be. This relates to helping people to do things that they are actually capable of, or you don't even give them an opportunity to figure out how capable they are of doing that, because you just step right in, you swoop in there, and you take care of everything before they've even asked. So therefore, this goes to the next point, which is you're always doing more than is required, or more than what is your share of the work. You're just taking it all on because you don't feel like other people are capable. And that's that trust issue that came up from those early years of trust that you may have witnessed. No, we can't trust those people. We got to do it ourselves. If you don't do it yourself, it won't be done properly. That's how we learn to get things done, is by always doing it on your own. Don't trust other people. No, other people are not capable. Okay, this is the limiting beliefs that we're programmed with. And so if you understand that the way you think impacts the way you behave, because your behavior is a direct response to the thoughts that you're having. So if you think that people aren't capable and the only way to get something done right is to do it yourself, then that's how you're going to behave. If you have a school project, let's say, and everyone's got their roles, You might show up to the meeting the next day with your group and just saying how you did it all. Oh, it's okay, everybody. Look, I just took care of the whole thing for everyone. Aren't I the greatest? No, you're depriving these other people, these other students of the opportunity to contribute and to do their part of the work. But you're thinking how great you are. They're going to like me so much because I just went ahead and did the whole thing. No, that's codependency right there. Don't do that. Next is you feel bitter and resentful when people don't accept or recognize your help or your good deeds. So, that person who shows up, who did it all, not giving other people an opportunity to contribute, and they didn't even say thank you. Oh, they didn't even recognize my hard work that I put into all of this. And then what happens the next time that you're codependent is you're hanging on to relationships that are unhealthy. They've gone beyond repair now. But you're still hanging in there. You're still hanging in there because you feel like there must be something more I can do for this person. But there's also the other element that you're hanging in there because you don't want to be alone. Because to be alone means you've lost your codependent addiction, right? Like the worst fear of a codependent person is being alone. If you've ever said, I can't be alone, that's you saying, I am codependent. So you'll stay in relationships aren't good for you because it's better than being alone. Yeah, because when you're alone, there's no one's problems to take care of. And then you really have to face yourself. You really have to look within. And that can be really scary for a lot of people. That whole shadow work that they talk about, right? Facing your shadow, facing those parts of yourself that you don't want to admit are the reason why you're here in this position to begin with, because of the people that you're choosing to get in relationships with. Like you're responsible for that. And maybe they may not have shown that to you in the beginning, but then they did at some point and you kept going, like we ignore these things so much. Like that point, you pity the people that you love until you grow resentful and hateful of them and you just call it all off. Because really, you just gotten frustrated with yourself. Like you can't believe that you have allowed this to go on for so long. Like you're starting to get a clue that of this pattern, of this addiction, of this unhealthy attachment that you have to other people that fuels your own self-worth because without other people to please and to serve, what are you good for? A lot of times people in those relationships, as soon as they've ended that relationship, it's a matter of time before they find someone else to pick back up where they left off, thinking that it's going to be any different. Because you think that the reason why that relationship didn't work out was because of the other person. No, the reason why that relationship didn't work out is because you have a faulty radar of how to choose people who are capable of a healthy, mutual, respectful relationship with you. I speak from my own experience. And that's where you have to take responsibility. So sometimes it can be really scary where you're like, oh shit, I'm just going to stay away from people altogether. And we'll get into that in the next part, how to overcome codependency, because like any other addiction, there requires a period of abstinence. Okay. So that you can reflect and realign yourself with your true values. Okay. So that's hanging on to relationships that are unhealthy because it's better than feeling alone until that just gets old and you got to cut the cord. Now, these are not true for all people who are codependent, but if you're saying yes to the majority of these things, then it's very likely, okay? Another area is you can't take a compliment. Somebody compliments you, you think like, oh, what do they want from me? They're just being nice, and you don't like receiving gifts because that means someone is doing something nice for you. And you're not used to that reciprocal attention. You're used to being the one who's always giving the gifts and doing the things. So when someone gives something to you, it doesn't feel right. You're not used to that. And with difficulty receiving compliments, you might also have difficulty receiving criticism because there is some sensitivity there as we go back to those early years when you were made fun of and belittled for who you were. So any sound of criticism is a personal blow and it's devastating. All right, so let's get to the list of what you can do. And if you went to the first list of how did we get here to begin with, how does somebody become codependent? You really have to go to that first list as a guide to heal those wounded parts of you and learn what was never taught to you. So first you have to start to face your own reality head on instead of always sticking your head in the sand, kind of being that ostrich and avoiding conflict all the time. You got to be acknowledging that there is such a thing as healthy conflict. It does exist. And I know perhaps you've been butting heads with people a lot. And so it seems impossible, but that's part of the relearning process, is how to have healthy, productive, respectful conflict confrontations with other people. That also means that you have to learn how to be assertive, right? Facing conflicts as an opportunity to strengthen your relationships. And what was probably also lacking in your relationships were boundaries. You didn't have any boundaries with yourself. You didn't have any boundaries with other people. You never expressed a boundary to anyone. If you did, it would come out sounding like an order, because boundaries weren't taught to you. So now you have to learn boundaries. You have to learn how to have emotional boundaries. You have to learn to understand that just because somebody is feeling a certain way doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to go in and save them and make them feel better. No, that's the whole holding of space. If I get angry, I can cope with my own anger. I know that I'm responsible to go and deal with anger in my own responsible way. No one else is going to come over here and de-escalate my anger for me. Just like it's not my responsibility to go and de-escalate someone else's anger. Unless that's like your job. Because to have an emotionally mature relationship means that if somebody is experiencing anger, they know that they need to go and de-escalate that on their own, or they will allow you to co-regulate with them. But initially, if somebody doesn't know how to regulate themselves and you go in to help regulate them, it's going to look like a big mess. And you could get hurt. And you stay codependent. So you want to start to find relationships with people who are already modeling healthy emotional boundaries. Because otherwise, if you get in a relationship with someone who doesn't have emotional boundaries and makes you responsible for their emotions, you're going to relapse back into your codependency traits again. You also are going to have to learn about what your own needs are and how you can fulfill your own needs. Because right now you've been fulfilling your needs for acceptance and love through other people and what you can do for them. Instead of looking at what can I do for myself, you may have lost your whole purpose and passion in life. You may have completely disconnected from who you are as a person. You might be asking yourself, who am I? I don't know who I am anymore or ever did. This can be the most difficult thing you're ever going to have to do. But start by looking at the needs that you took care of in other people. What were the needs that you tended to in other people? Those are the needs that you're going to have to tend to in yourself. You're also going to have to learn how to rebuild your self-trust and learn all the ways that you can be more open and vulnerable with your emotions. So instead of just getting angry all the time, what is underneath that anger? It's probably sadness that you were never allowed to express, because back in the day when you would express your sadness and vulnerable emotions, they were ignored, remember? Issues were pushed under the table. So you're going to probably have to go through a lot of inner work, inner child work. Your inner child might not be trusting you. You're going to have to rebuild that connection to yourself. That, again, is going to take some time. Now, if you're carrying around some perfectionist attitudes with yourself, that's going to also need to go to the wayside. Because as a perfectionist, you are going to get very impatient with this process. You're going to get very frustrated with yourself as you go and change the narrative in your head and change those limiting beliefs that have been contributing to your codependent behaviors. That's why practicing self-compassion is going to be the best way to overcome your toxic shame and guilt. Being able to hold your feelings with understanding, validate your own feelings, and then be able to tune into what you need so that you can show up for your feelings with compassion. And last, but certainly not least, You're going to have to start to overcome your own addictions, not only codependency addiction, but maybe you also have some addiction to alcohol, to substances, to food, to shopping, whatever it is that you've been using or overusing during this time to numb yourself, to forget about problems, to disconnect from yourself even more. You're going to need to face those things head on. Now, I know this sounds pretty exhausting, so I want you to just choose one of these things to start with, okay? When we think about all the things that we have to do to change a behavior, it's overwhelming. And guess what we do? Nothing. We do nothing. We say it's too hard. I can't do it. But I know you can. I've done it. I have done this miraculous change, made a 180 into a different way of showing up for myself and realizing that at the end of the day, you are going to have to let go of relationships in your life that are enabling your codependent behaviors. You're also going to have to be okay with being alone. Part of this involves abstaining from codependent behaviors while you're learning the new skills. Like someone who's addicted to alcohol, they're going to have to stop going to the bar. They're going to have to stop hanging out with their friends who would always drink on the weekend. They're going to have to remove all the alcohol from their home. They're going to have to pick up some new behaviors and some new habits instead to replace it while they're learning how to live a different way and how to handle their emotions and how to look after their own needs that doesn't involve an addiction. So you're going to likely have periods of loneliness. You're going to have periods of being isolated from other people as you have to abstain and pull yourself away from relationships that are codependent, and you know it. And just telling those people boundaries and saying, hey, I'm not going to do this for you anymore, probably isn't going to work. Boundaries are going to have to be redefined for yourself as you enter into new relationships with people. That is going to be the hardest thing. So what you can do is one small thing you can do today is just acknowledging the awareness that you have. Acknowledging the awareness is a great first step, like I said, to making any change. And just see where your awareness takes you. Just see what it's telling you. What is your intuitive sense telling you that you need to do? And follow that. Although I gave you a whole list of things, doesn't mean that's doesn't mean that's the exhaustive list and the only list of ways to overcome codependency. You're going to have to learn to listen to yourself. And in terms of listening to yourself, is that first step to reconnecting with who you are, what your needs are, what your feelings are, validating yourself and giving yourself compassion. I know you got this, one step at a time.